All right there, sixth graders. We are going to learn about some coordinate planes today. We are going to be learning about graphs and all the things that make a good graph. So there's a few things you absolutely need to make a graph worthwhile. In fact, there are four things. Four things that absolutely every single graph needs to have in my class. How many things? Four. So I'm going to hit you with some knowledge. The first thing that every graph in my class needs to have is it's got to have the x and the y axis nice and straight. Now, it was easy for me to get this one nice and straight because I'm cheating and I'm going along with some lines. But if you don't have lines to cheat with, I expect you to use a ruler. I expect you to use the line drawing thing in UPad, but I want to see some nice straight lines. So how many things did I say a graph needs? Four. First one, straight lines. Next up, horizontal axis is labeled X. What's it labeled? X. So now that's two things. Nice straight lines, horizontal axis labeled X. Now if we're labeling that horizontal axis X, then you know we're going to label this vertical axis Y. It's got to be X and Y. No switcherooing, no messing with that. Always, always, X is horizontal, Y is vertical. All right, so we've got some straight lines. We've got our X and Y. And then the last thing we need some labels. So I'm going to number these. Maybe I'll label this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which would make this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, four things here, folks. Nice straight lines, horizontal X, vertical Y, labels so I know what my numbers are. So I know how many units each square is worth. What you are going to do next, you are going to label the graph in your notes in UPad, and you're going to call Miss Parker over to look to make sure you have those four things. One more time. Nice straight lines, horizontal X, vertical Y, labeling your numbers. All right, go ahead and draw. Raise your hand when you're ready for me to come look. All right, now that you guys have showed me that you can have the four elements of a good graph, now I'm going to blow your mind a little. We're going to mess around so these graphs can show us exactly what we need them to. So check this out up here. The coordinate we have, -3, 35, -4, 20. Hold up, but our graph only went up to 10 and -10. Not cool. How are we going to get around this? So here's where we're going to blow your mind a bit. Because the squares, each of these squares, like this square and 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 this square, they don't have to equal 1. In fact, they can equal whatever you want them to be. Because guess what? You're in charge. You're making the rules. So they can equal whatever you say. So hold on. I'm going to make a nice straight line for my graph. Because I just told you all good graphs have nice straight lines. All good graphs have nice straight lines. Straight line, straight line. And then what else do I need? That's right, I need my X. I need my Y. But now I need my number labels. And look. Okay, I've even got all the way up to -40. So how about if I decide, because I am in charge, that each of these squares, they're not 1. They're not 1 square anymore, really. They're 5. So how about 5? 10, 15. I'm going to skip one to make this 25, 35, 45. That's right, I can do that. So then we're going to have 5, 15, 25, 35. Cool. So now that I've changed up the numbers, I've changed the scale on my graph. Super easy for me to find points like 9, -40. Now that I made sure I put my 40 on there. So, go ahead, you graph this point, 9, -40, and this point, and this point, and this point, and this point. And once you have all of those points graphed, you may raise your hand, and Mrs. Parker will come help you. So we just practiced making the scale on our graph bigger, going all the way up to 50 or even higher. But now we're going to work on making it a little bit smaller. Check out these coordinates. 1/10, 5/10, -7/10, -4/10, -8/10. So now we're looking at coordinates that are all less than 1. So if we've got a bunch of coordinates that are less than 1, then we're going to have a scale for stuff that is less than 1. What I want you guys to notice is that all those teeny tiny coordinates that are less than 1, those are all the x coordinates. So that means that our x-axis is going to have to be on a pretty small scale. So let's get that going. I've got my nice straight axis, and of course, I'm going to label that X. Hold on, I'm going to fix that arrow because, man, that's ugly. Let's try again, please. A little bit better. All right, and I'm going to give it a y-axis as well, because an X without a y is just sad. Now, the biggest coordinate that I'm seeing, or the one with the most extreme magnitude, is 8/10. So I need to make sure my x-axis at least goes out to 8/10. So how about if we say that each square represents 1/10? So we got 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and so on. And then the y-axis, well, the y-axis needs to at least go up to 7 and down to -5. So I'll just keep the scale for that at 1 to 1. So then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, nice and neatly labeled. And now what I would like you guys to do is go ahead and graph all of these points and raise your hand when you're ready for me to come check your work. All right, pause this video, graph some points. Let's go. For this last example, example 4, I want to hammer home a point that we were looking at example 3. So check out the coordinates that we're looking at. Okay, our x has got to go all the way to -14, but our y's are a lot smaller. The most extreme y coordinate we see is only 3 5/10. So this is a great example of a graph that would need 2 different scales for x and y. So 2 different scales. So what I want you to determine is what would be a good scale for the x-axis and what would be a good scale for the y-axis. Once you've got that set up with your nice straight axes on this graph, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll come check. All right, go.